Good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to our weekly newsletter roundup of all the things that have happened here on Climate Transformed. As ever, it's me, Rupert Rowling, one of the hosts, speaking with Paul, the founder. How are you, Paul?
Is that like Chance the Rapper, Paul the founder? I can do that. I can do that. But we had a busy week. We had a very busy week. We did some very good stuff. I mean, I started off the week with an interview with Hamilton Lane, which I refer to as the $100 billion, the multi-$100 billion firm that no one's heard of, and with their head of ESG and their head of real asset. And as I said at the time, we spent a lot of time at Climate Transform deep in the weeds. And the event we did yesterday talking about modelling all of this was a great example of that. But what I liked about the Hamilton Lane piece, it was deliberately at 36,000 feet and a deliberate look at where we are in this energy transition, where we are in the decarbonisation cycle, and looking at big industries, what they are contributing to carbon, what are they contributing to the solutions, and ways we can sort of structurally move forward at a very macro level. So so the interview with Hamilton Lane was called The Big Picture, and it was precisely that. And it was really a nice change from sort of the bottom-up micro type way that we look at this versus this big picture thinking.
Yeah, that was it was a fascinating event, and it was one of the big takeaways for me was the role of it's an evolution, isn't it? You can't just pull the ripcord on everything that's happened now. It is that word we've heard a lot of times, but it's a transition. And when you zoom out a bit, it was Brent and Paul, wasn't it?
Yes.
That they gave a nice overview of that. Then we jumped talking about 36,000 feet. That segues nicely onto Piaggio Aerospace.
Courtney was very excited about this because she's ridden a Vespa for years, and that's for those of you who know anything about the history of Piaggio, which has been around for well over 100 years. It was the original maker of the Vespa, but got into aviation in 1917 during the First World War, I should say, and now it is a company that is dedicated to aviation technology and R&D around greening this industry. I have to admit, I came away from this interview with Antonio very, very skeptical about the path for this. I'm on the surface. A lot of technology sounds like it's scary, but the notion of having to have planes that have using hydrogen, which takes up 4 times the space of traditional jet fuel, and having to cool that hydrogen to minus 252 degrees for it to actually function, or else you've got a safety issue. Sounds like a lot to me, and I think it's very, very telling right now that currently sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF as it's known, is 1.1 of 1%. Of total fuel consumption, right? So 10 basis points out of everything is sustainable, whether that's synthetic or biofuels. Just to put that into context, if in the next 10 years you had 100x improvement, still only 1 in 10 litres of aviation fuel would be green. I just don't see how it happens. And whilst their technology is wonderful, they are a small aircraft company. They are focusing on the highest of high-end business travel market. The private planes you fly in on vacation, Rupert. Those sort of things. And I think it's whilst that is obviously it's progress and the technology can be developed, and I get all of that, but it comes back to this point, mate. Environmental improvements at a structural level, it's a rich man's solution. Right, so if we're talking about $80,000 Teslas with home charging capabilities, or green private jets, it's still not mass market. And for me, I get a little worried about this because I worry about the broader adoption and the scalability of all these things. Whilst I really hope that Jamie Dimon, when he flies private, does it in a green possible way, does it really matter in the greater scheme of things?
It is an interesting point you mentioned there, because actually an event we then had later on in the week, one that I was in the hot seat for with Kevin McGeaney, who is CEO of a low carbon brokerage called SEB. And we mentioned, we had a little chat about aviation fuel on that, and he raised the point that you actually need it to be in every airport, so that you have options, because there's no point being able to fly one way and then landing there and for the refuel or for a rescheduling of the leg. It needs to be comprehensive, and that scalability that is hugely problematic, isn't it, for aviation? And Kevin himself, actually, it was a fascinating discussion. He set up this brokerage back in 2006 when the landscape on the energy transition and ESG probably hadn't been even coined as a phrase back then. And I really enjoyed chatting to him. He was a guy that practiced what he preaches. He's made the company B Corp, which takes a lot of work, but also on top of that, he's led expeditions to Antarctica and to the North Pole, to Haiti and to Senegal, to actually see the impact of climate change is happening in these places. And they pump a lot of their money back into education projects in Africa, I think notably Malawi and stuff like that. But he comes from an investment banking background, set up the brokerage, and we had a very wide-ranging discussion. So I'd highly recommend people having a look at that on the website.
He was a good one. And then yesterday, I've been lucky enough to know a couple of Rhodes Scholars in my time, and they always make me feel bad about myself, because they are Rhodes Scholars for a reason, and they have very large mental capacities. And Derek Lyon, who was the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Actual, was also one of those. And Actual is a company that uses a model-based approach to transitioning supply chains. So their argument is that existing data doesn't truly reflect where you want to go. And it's a very interesting way of scenario testing. And literally, it's like playing with if you remember The Sims, I don't know if you ever played the SimCity and all that stuff back in the day. It's very similar to that. So, they've done, there's a great, on the site, there'll be their presentation, and they go through how they work with the New Zealand Merino Board, which is one of the, obviously one of the biggest producers of merino wool anywhere in the world, and how you could decarbonize that merino wool supply chain, so it allows companies like Target and H&M and these sort of companies to be more sustainable themselves. Really interesting guy. Frankly, the best presenter I've met, which is probably a combination of A, he knows his stuff, B, he's done it before, and C, he's a Rhodes Scholar. Really interesting. We had a good chat, but if you've got a spare 20 minutes, just go and look at the presentation. It was I'm very jealous of his presenting skills.
Well, it's been a great week of content, and as we record this, actually, we're recording this on Friday early afternoon London time. Actually, you've got one more event still today with Graham Rinn, the founder of Roadrunner Recycling. You're going to be chatting about how data can optimize recycling, and that promises to be another fascinating one. And
because again, you and I joke about what do we, when we still don't have an answer about what we do with pizza boxes. But at the end of the day, what you and I do obviously is important, and what everyone does personally is important. But the real areas of optimization is what you can do industrially, and that's what Roadrunner does. It basically goes in and has a look at your procurement, at all your procurement and your disposal applications and processes. And I think on the site they actually say they'll guarantee a 50% improvement, which I'm not quite sure how you do that, but no, it's in, and obviously that I don't know how much data you can use in your daily lives as individuals, but certainly at a corporate level, it's enormous, and that's an area of real change. It's recycling in the US is a $50 billion a year business. It's legit. And I often joke that everywhere we look at Climate Transform, there's another $1 billion business, but this is a legitimate one.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be lots for people to catch up on by the time that they receive this video. There'll be lots of content to review on Climate Transformed, and then next week going forward, we've got a couple of events. You're speaking with Ben Deere, CEO of Osmosis Investment Management, and then we've got the next iteration in our in our collaboration with the Women in Green Hydrogen, with Carolyn speaking to Isabel Burbujo, who's Chief Innovation Officer at Ignis Energia.
What do they do?
The title of the event is Green Hydrogen: What Hurdles Are Project Developers Facing? So that's the I don't know. I was going to say the third. If it's probably more than that, but the fifth or sixth in our series of working with the.
Still haven't had a good answer to my question about the only thing that makes green hydrogen green is using renewable energy, and there's a lot of not passing any aspersions about these events, but I do think in general in the hydrogen space it's very easy to throw around the phrase green hydrogen. It's ditched around far too much. Again, my hatred of greenwashing. I'd love to see this stuff more clearly defined.
Well, maybe you'll get that clarity next week on Thursday.
Hopefully so. Mate, have a wonderful weekend, and it was a really constructive week. And everyone, climatetransform.com. Love you. We'd love you to spend more time there. Please subscribe. We need your help to keep doing what we do. So, Rupert, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you shortly.
Thanks, Paul.